Sorry, that's going back a few years to my playlist from a couple years ago. So, welcome to getting ready for 2024, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the new season. Got several changes to talk about tonight, making some small changes to the trail, but you need to know about them so that you can be prepared for them. But before we do that, I want to talk about 2023 just a little bit. You know, we had a really, really good 2023. We had a very competitive 2023. I learned a lot, as I have every year I've done this. Uh, but I've got a couple guests to talk about 2023 with me. You may or may not recognize these guys. They played a key role in 2023 for us. So I've got Hank Bajan, who won the Angler of the Year last year in 2023, and Will Lambert, who finished second and then won the Clash of the Titans. Uh, so you know, it was a great year last year. I've got some stats to talk about with these guys, but even before I do, I just want to give you guys a chance to say hello and just give your thoughts on last season. So we'll start with Hank.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? What's up, Will? What's up, Mitch? Good to see you. I had a meeting last night with the other CKA directors, and I was like, "Oh man, fishing season's coming." Like you could just feel that little kind of tension in the room where we were talking, and it was like you get that look, like, "Oh man, it's time to fish soon." And Jordan was nearby. We were actually down in Pittsburgh, and when I drove over Jordan, I looked at the lake, and I just got that little, you know.
And it's high right now too.
Oh yeah.
It had gotten down almost back to normal, and then we had these latest rains, and now it's back up, 4 feet high again. So,
And I don't know about everybody else, but for me, fishing season starts when I catch my first white bass. I love fishing the white bass run. I'll go on the Eno, I'll go up New Hope Creek, I'll go up the Haw when they're running in there, and I'll catch them all day. I love catching those fish. Uh, that was the first fish I ever caught out of a kayak was a white bass, so it has a sentimental value for me. So when those white bass come up late February, I'm ready.
well, they Chris Douglas, Carolina All Out, who they had sponsored us before, and still friends with us. Chris did an episode of the spawn on the Eno River, right there coming out of at the top of Falls, and going up the river. And since then, my father-in-law has always pushed me, like, we've got to go up there in April when that spawn happens and catch those fish. They are fun to catch. Jordan, right across from the dam at Jordan, they used to school up a lot, like straight out from the dam, just to the right of that island over there. And when we couldn't catch bass, we'd go over there and throw jigs, silver jigging spoons, things like that, and catch those white bass till you were tired of catching them. So
yeah. Let me just add one more thing, and I'll pass the mic to Will. Will,
yeah.
You got on a team. Congratulations, brother.
Thank you.
I'm so
Appreciate
happy. You're getting recognized because it's time for some of the younger anglers in these clubs to get those perks that some of us old guys might have been hogging up for a while. So I am so happy for you, man. I was really happy to see that.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, and that's the first one I've really ever had, and I fish a lot of the rods anyway, so that was perfect. It couldn't have been a better match, I guess you can say.
I have owned a couple of those rods, and I'll let you talk about the company and all that. I'll give them a plug, Will. But I've owned a couple of those rods, and I had no complaints with the ones I had. So
Yeah, it's JB Custom Rods, and they're made here in North Carolina, around the Dunn area. Um, they're a little bit different than your typical casting rod in that the first guide is up top and then it spirals, so it's almost like um, a spinning rod. And so that tip being like a spinning rod is a lot more sensitive. They are very sensitive rods, very durable rods. Um, and the ones that I've had issues with was my own fault. Don't high stick an 18-incher on a chatterbait trying to flip it in. It's not smart. Stuff like that. But yeah, other than that, they're phenomenal. Love them.
say good evening to Cody. He said good evening to us, and see
What's
Eric
up, buddy?
Nelson's here. Andy Thomas. There's lots of guys that did not go to that link that was posted in the bad thing about StreamYard is it doesn't play really, really well with Facebook. So you have to go to streamyard.com/Facebook and kind of sign up. You kind of give it permission to see your Facebook identity. And if you don't do that, then I can't see who's posting. What I see is something like this
Hmm.
or this. Um,
Yo,
I've got lots of these. So out of
so
everybody that's posted, I see a few of them. So, and how do I hide that? Hide current comment. Okay,
I think
so
Howdy is Jeremy Way.
probably. So one of the things I want to do is talk a little bit about the race that you guys had last year in AOI, uh, and that actually kind of ties into something I'm going to talk about this year's AOI. And so when we started thinking about this year's AOI, it's kind of why I thought last minute to invite you guys and get you on here. So just to go through some of the things I see from last year. Um, First of all, Will, you missed the very first event at Falls,
Yeah,
and just so that everyone understands, the way our AOI works is you get to drop your two lowest events. So if we have 8 regular season events, your top 6 count towards AOI. And that's just, we realize not everybody can be at every tournament, and that, and you're not going to be dead on at every tournament either. So it gives you a little bit of a buffer and kind of levels everything out for people. Uh, so yeah, you missed the first one completely and got 0 points for that. Likewise, the third event last year, Hank didn't catch a fish, and the only points he got for that event were the 100 points that we give out, for just for participating, basically. Because I felt like if someone missed if you miss an event, um, that's one thing. But if you fish an event and you paid and you don't catch anything, you still tried. So we give a base of 100 points. Now, if you win an event, you get 300 points, and it drops every place. Is 2 points less. Seconds 298. And so forth. One thing I did want to point out is I wish I had figured out like an average finish. Trying to see, it looks. I don't know if the numbers are right that it's giving me, but so on the 7 events, nope, it's not doing it because I put first, second, third instead of just 1, 2, 3 or whatever. But Will, you had a fifth, a first, a 14th, a 17th, and then a third and a first. And Hank had a first that did not catch, and then a 16th, an 8th, a 4th, second, and an 11th. So looking at that, it's really pretty close as far as finishes. Will had the other really, both of you in the regular season had 2 wins, and I think that's what put both of you up pretty close. They came, obviously, Hank won the first 2 events of the season, and then we skipped or not skipped an event, but then we did the third event, and Will won the fourth and fifth back to back. So he won Tar River and Raleigh Rumble, while Hank won Falls and Lake Mack. So it was funny to me last night that everybody's saying, don't let Will fish Mack. And at least in our trail, Hank won Mack, not Will. So,
and put up the biggest bag of the year too, I believe, in CCKF, right?
actually, no, that was you, Will.
I thought
You,
Hank. Okay.
you put up the biggest bag at the Raleigh Rumble with 103.25 inches.
Yeah.
And the one thing to note about that is that every fish was 20 inches plus in that bag.
Yep.
So
that was an amazing event. Because I mean, 11. I think it's maybe 10:30. I caught my first one, or first decent sized one, and I was actually really struggling. And then just went and fished some stuff that I'd scanned the Sunday before. There was a big rain coming, or big storm, and I had to hurry up, and didn't even get to fish it. And just went up there, and I talked to Rick Morris, and I was like, man, I'm struggling. And lo and behold, I went up there, and it was, yeah, it got a lot better.
And so one thing we require of all of our AOIs and our Clash of the Titans winners is we need to know exactly what baits and what points on each lake you were at when you caught each fish.
Clash of the Titans would have been a Elegy Bone Mega Bass +1 jerkbait.
Really?
On in the stump field. Yep. And then earlier in the year was a 1.25 ounce spinnerbait. Just fishing a big profile.
Oh, nice.
Tar River was a OG Slim, Gizzard Chad. I don't crank on crankbaits for some reason. It's like me buying a top water. I buy it because we're all addicted to lures and thinking, oh, if I don't have this one right now, I'm gonna, or eventually I'm gonna want it. And yeah, I just happened to fish it that day and it worked.
Jeremy says we don't talk about the Rumble, and then he's got his faces. Yeah. So I was looking at. I became really interested in. The race was close points wise. So that interested me. How else was it close? And if we look at the bags that you turned in for every tournament last year, now Will was down. Will only had 7 regular season tournaments to Hank's 8. But if I look at that, Will turned in 470 inches on 7 events. Hank turned in 501 3/4 on 8 events. But if I include Clash of the Titans, the numbers really amazed me. Including Clash of the Titans, Will turned in 571.75 inches last year. Hank turned in 572. So across the entire season, including Clash of the Titans, there was a 1/4 inch difference in the bags that you turned in at all those tournaments. And that just
put it right there, Will.
I don't know why that shocked me so much, but I was like, if AOI is close, sure, how close are the bags? Like how close is the total fishing? Now, if you look at each tournament, there was a big swing, right? In what you turned in at each of the various tournaments. Let's say, for example, like at Hank had 102.25 at McIntosh, and Will had 92.25.
I carried a 12-incher in that event I couldn't get rid of. I only had 5 bites all day. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was thankful to have that 12-incher too. Because you got to get a limit.
So I will say this: At Falls Lake, Hank's kicker was 20.25 inches, and at McIntosh, it was 21.75. Tar River, he had an 18 and a quarter. And then everything else was, less than 17 inches, the other tournaments. For Will, you had a 21.25-inch kicker at the Raleigh Rumble, a 20 and a half at Tar River, and a 20 and a quarter at Heiko. Those were the big fish out of those bags. Um, uh, and one reason I started thinking about this, and if you look over to the right of your screen, you see the Amped Outdoors logo, and we picked up Amped Outdoors lithium batteries as a sponsor this year. That introduces a new contest for 2024 that we've not had previously. Big Bass. It's absolutely free. There is no entry into Big Bass. So compliments of Amped Outdoors, the biggest bass turned in at any tournament in 2025 is going to get a cash prize, thanks to these guys.
Awesome.
And that's, they are also, they've given us a discount code. So if anybody's looking to get a lithium battery this year, anytime you register for a tournament or anytime you buy something out of the store, so if you pre-order one of the hats or if you pay for your AOI, you'll get an email with our discount codes in them. One promise I made to one of our sponsors is that I would not make the discount code available for the public to be able to get it. So I just went ahead and did that with all of our discount codes. And so, the night before every tournament, I'll send out an email to all the registered anglers that has our discount codes. And thanks for registering. Here's your discount codes. But if you sign up for AOI, you should get an auto response that has those in it as well. And Amped is in there. Sorry, I'm trying to flip between spreadsheets in the background here so I can speak about it the way I should. And for some reason, my spreadsheet's not here. Give me just 1 second. Browse.
I was looking at Alex's comment. I want to go back to the Raleigh Rumble really quick. So the fish that I caught that kind of put me onto that pattern, Ryan Galloway had lost or had a fish on like 2 weeks prior and lost it, broke off. Well, lo and behold, that fish that I caught ended up being the same fish that he lost, and it still had the crankbait in its mouth. And I was able to take it out and end up giving it back to him at the end of the tournament after we kind of like talked. I said, "Hey, did anybody lose a crankbait recently?" Blah 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 at our meetup, and lo and behold, it was his. And so I was able to give it back to him, and I was like, "Man, that's a crazy story. That doesn't happen at all."
Yeah, it's funny that it's rare enough to catch a fish that has someone else's bait in its mouth. How extremely rare is it that you would actually know who the person was that lost the bait? So that's
exactly.
That's pretty. I didn't know that story, so that's nice to find out.
Every time someone catches a fish with a popper in its mouth, just give it to me. They're all mine.
I was hitting up the Carolina crankbait guys to see if they had any of those old model poppers. Every once in a while, they'll have them on their website, and I've lost all the good poppers. I've eventually lost, and now when you get them, they're not made the way they used to be, right? They're made to the same dimensions, but they're made out of a different material, and they've kind of lost some of that flavor that they used to have, I think. So. So I showed a comment from Patrick Creech, who said he may already have an Amp battery in his shopping cart thanks to the code. Give a shout out to Patrick. He's a new guy with us this year. He has signed up for AOI already, and just to kind of let everybody know where we stand. We've got a little while to the first tournament, but as of today, we've got 12 people that have already signed up for Angler of the Year. And, lots of returning guys, a couple, at least that I can pick up, 4 new guys. And two of the new guys actually signed up today. If you haven't been to the website and checked it out, if you go to centralcarolinakayakfishing.com, you will see at the top on the little tabs that you can select, there's one now that's actually called Shop. And if you go to Shop, the very first item that you'll see is the AOI registration. And then you'll see several hats. You can order different color hats. And so just to reiterate, I sent a thing out about it today on the webpage. That selection of hats is only available for a limited amount of time. And even though this person's name isn't showing on the thing, I think a few of us at least know who this is or have a good idea. Um, Probably the other participant in the Popar battles, the famous Popar battles that happen from time to time through the spring and the summer, and at Harris Lake a lot of times, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you go there, you'll see the hats. Those hats are only available for a limited amount of time. I have to place a minimum order to get good pricing. And I thought, well, as long as I'm going to have to place a minimum order, I'm going to give everybody a chance to pick from these colors. Once that closes, what I'll do is order the ones that people have requested, and then I'll just order so many of a few certain colors. So I'll get like the gray and white and the camouflage and maybe one other, and order a quantity of each of those to have on hand at weigh-ins in different events if somebody wants to pick one up. But if you're looking for that red or light blue or Duke blue or whatever color I've got up there that you're interested in, get your order in, within about the next 2 weeks before I'll place the order with the supplier. So I've got a list of things here I was going to talk about, and that takes the hats and that takes the big fish. By the way, the big fish prize, absolutely no entry fee. But if you turn in the biggest bass on Tourney X this year, that's a $350 payout, 100% coming from Amped Outdoors. And they've also given, I've got two 30 amp hour batteries and chargers to give away throughout the season. So awesome. We'll probably give one of those away as a special prize, and then one as a drawing, probably at the Raleigh Rumble, because I like to call that our flagship event for some reason. And so just make sure everybody knows about that. And I guess at this point, I'm going to start talking about the changes for 2024. Will and Hank, you guys are welcome to stay on and give your opinions on them, or you can drop off. It's 100% up to you.
Could I just say one thing before?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was sitting here before we came on. I just found a quiet area. You notice I'm not in my usual fishing room. I went to a different part of the house, and so I keep a journal, and as you can see, there's a little bit of glare. Well, maybe you can see there. It's full of maps. Hold on. Can you see that? Is there a lot of glare on there? Yeah.
Now I see it. It just changed. It just converted. Yeah.
So you can see, like, I draw maps. I keep notes. I note things like water temperature, wind direction. If I'm fishing in current, like in a river or creek, I'll look at the USGS gauges. I'll write all the details down so I can adjust colors of my baits for the next time I go there, what to anticipate when I'm pre-fishing, what to bring with me, etc. And then listening to you guys talk about the statistics from last year, and I think I might be talking to the people coming into the race and thinking, yeah, I want to go for Angler of the Year, or even for me, like, I've been chasing Angler of the Year titles for over a decade. In the last 3 years, I got caught up in some really exciting races. I came close with a couple clubs, and I finally got it with CCKF. But the amount of preparation and then the amount of work that goes into it, the pre-fishing. Will and I communicated last summer. I remember he knew I was pre-fishing the Cape Fear. He asked me some questions. I talked to him about it. We weren't giving each other, like, waypoints or anything. but we were just kind of sharing just general notes about, how the river's fishing, things like that. So communication between anglers, obviously that you can't do some of that on the water, but the way that enhanced competition, it made me and Will work even harder. The amount of work that goes into finishing or closing out or just fishing it to the end it's remarkable. Like, I've got this notebook. I'm about a quarter of the way through it. It's my last 2 seasons. I've got a whole stack of these downstairs, and each one of them has all of those notes that go into it. And every year it changes. I was looking through this, and it was just amazing. I fished 18 tournaments last year. The previous year I fished 19. And every year it just tells a different story. It's a different chapter. And every year I was coming up short. When I finally got that title after an epic battle with Will, I couldn't believe it. And I had to sit back and process it. I've been a little quiet because last season just took so much out of me, but it was so much fun. Now that I get to sit back and appreciate it and look back at the camaraderie, the sense of community that we have in a club like CCKF, but also the commitment to fishing hard and putting in the work and learning your craft and learning the water and doing all that stuff is really amazing. And yeah, um, Alex, I appreciate that. Thank you, brother. And just the mutual respect you develop with people, I love it. It was just a really great season overall. I'm still profoundly humbled by the way it ended, because that last day I was sweating it out, man. And I know Will
I
was
tried.
too, because yeah, that was brutal. My bite wasn't where I thought it was going to be, man. It took me a while to figure it out. So
I
making
definitely
those
changed.
adjustments, it really is so worth it. And I just want younger guys or newer guys to the club to just be like, oh yeah, um, I don't know what I'm getting into, but I'm going to try and do that. And if you do it, just go all in and have fun while you're doing it. It is so worth it. Um, there are very few people in the end who actually walk away with these titles. Will has one from CKA. I have one now from CCKF. It's a lot of work, and it feels great when it's over. Even if you come up short, I still feel good about it, and I keep coming back for more. So I love it, and I want to thank you, Mitch, for running such a great trail last year. It was a fun series. These memories are just going to last for a lifetime. It's really special, and I'm grateful and humbled, and I encourage everybody to just go all in and have a good time with the club next season.
Yeah, I'll say this: the best thing that I take with me from CCKF is not any award or reward. It's the people that I've met through this trail, and just about everybody on this list. I would not have met them if it wasn't for CKA or CCKF or Foothills. You know, wouldn't have met Cody and those guys out at Foothills had I not started CCKF and had they not started Foothills. The camaraderie. I think that's the one thing. Even though it's competitive fishing in the kayaks, I think the number one thing you get out of it's the camaraderie. And fishing bass boat trails prior to this, I didn't. I formed so many more strong friendships through this than I ever did in the bass boats, because I think the bass boats as a just as a grand, lump them all into one characterization, right? I think maybe they get a little too competitive, and it's like it's almost like youth sports these days. Everybody thinks that they're going to qualify for, the Bassmaster Classic or the Red Crest, where honestly, I know I'm not, but what I am winning is with friends and with relationships. So definitely appreciate everybody that participates. The relationships make it worth the work that it takes. So
Absolutely. Well said,
I
Mitch.
agree, 100%. And, I think with us in kayaks, we don't have the availability. Which I mean, I have a motor, But talking about, a 250 horsepower motor on the back or whatever, and being able to run 10 miles up the lake because you made a bad call in the first two out. No, you don't get that in a kayak. You pretty much, I mean, you have to put time in, and you have to be right. And yeah, I don't see the lies or the whatever you want to call it that a lot of people deal with in bass boats. I feel like the kayak community is a little bit more together compared to the bass boat world.
Yeah,
Not that I've ever been in it, but I've been around it or know some buddies that are in it, and yeah, they're
it's
competitive.
definitely a different world. I see it firsthand. Working with Jacopo Galelli, who's now he's on the Bass Pro Tour with Major League Fishing. We talk a lot, and people sometimes ask me, they're like, "Henry, how do you know that guy? Like, he's like a boat pro. What are you doing helping him?" My grandmother is from the same place in Italy that he's from, so we have this
Yeah,
weird
yeah, got that
connection.
bond. Yeah.
So random, but when I see, like, from the inside what those guys go through, man, that's a tough crowd. There's a sense of community there, but it's not like what we have in the kayak world. The kayak world's much different, and I prefer it to really in a great way. Um, it's it's really amazing what we've built up in this state here, statewide. I mean, look, there was like new clubs popping up for this year. We were talking last night about going to fish with Daniel down in
Port
Wilmington and
City. Yeah.
check out his club. So, um, you know, it's an amazing community. It's a big scene, and I'm just, man, it's just so much fun. As
Right.
I get older, I'm trying to tell myself to slow down, but it's hard.
Yeah. So to talk about, North Carolina definitely seems to produce some guys that do well. So one, talking about the pros, I thought it was interesting. Carl Jakobsen that fishes the Elite Series fished the Hobie BOS last week,
Yep.
right? He announced that he was going to do some fishing. Of course, you got Iconelli is doing some kayak fishing. Justin Lee, right, is a native. He's doing commercials for Native, right? And then you've got others. So I think you're seeing some of the pros move over to kayak fishing. But going back to the North Carolina thing, we had two guys that finished 1 and 2 the first day at the Hobie BOS that are North Carolina kayak fishermen.
Yep.
And have fished CCKF events, and assumingly, I assume they fished some CKA events. I know they fished some Queen City events, but Wyatt Hammond was in second, and I'm getting old. Well, Hunter Hernandez was first, and they broke records. I don't know if you saw that, but they broke some day one records and weighing in some monsters. Unfortunately, day two didn't work out for them so well. I had talked to Wyatt after day one, Facebook chatting Wyatt, and he said, we're going back. He said we left fish there, so we're going back to that same spot. And I have not talked to either one of them since, but evidently those fish were not there anymore. I don't know that weather conditions changed that drastically.
They did.
It did it. I'm not sure. Yeah, I didn't look at the weather, but something changed.
It wasn't a big deal, but it was enough. It was a small cold front that went through, and some of those bigger females just cleared out, from what I was told from people I spoke to. It was something like what happened at Heiko at the last event with CCKF last season. That cold front came through, and it just pushed those fish back off of some of the points where they were hurting bait back on the south end of the lake where I was fishing down by that bridge. And it in those situations, you have to be able to adjust and ask yourself, okay, if they're not here where they were, where might they have gone in these conditions? And that's a tough thing to do on a lake that if it's a lake in Florida that you're only fishing the first time, it's even harder.
Yeah. and my weakness is I fish by memory more than condition. So I'm just conditioned to that. I've caught them in this spot before. That's the spot I'm going to start on, and that's not what you need to do to be successful, right? You have to look at your conditions and have a plan. Especially in a kayak, like Will said, you don't have a motor you can crank up. If you make the wrong decision, you're paying a price for it. I did say initially the very first kayak tournament I ever fished was a CKA event at Randleman. Um, God, nine years ago, I think probably. Um, and after I started fishing like that and only basically fished out of kayaks, I said it's taught me to slow down and to really pick an area apart. If I go to a laydown, I'm going to fish that laydown for a while because it's unless there's another laydown just within sight. If I'm fishing laydowns, you've really got to apply some resources to that laydown. And what you learn is just because you don't catch a fish out on the tip or in this fork, there might be a fish hanging on the other side. Is there any water moving? Are they going to be on the down current side of that laydown? There's lots of factors to it, and it forces you to have patience. And
not only that, I mean, you can take a lay down and you can fish the outer half of it all you
right.
and you may not catch them, but there might be sometimes where you got to flip it up there, just flip it all the way up on the bank and drag it in the water. I've had that, and that be the only way to trigger them. I mean, it's crazy how picky they can be, and once you find that little thing, can be just the difference between having a great day and a terrible day.
Right. And Hank, I hope everybody's getting excited for the second event of this coming season because we're back at Heiko for the second event. Heiko was the first event where everybody that showed up turned in a fish. That's the only time that's happened to CCKF. So fishing it early in the season, I have high hopes for that event. And with that, I'm just going to run through the schedule real quick. I know everybody's seen it, but if I click on the right button, well, I guess yeah. So we start off in March 9th at Sharon Harris, and that's a love it or hate it lake for all of us.
Hate it.
Right. But Drew will love it, right? And there's several other guys that love it. 2 weeks later, which is it's the only month. No, it's not the only month. The first month and the last month we have two events each, but the very last one is Clash of the Titans. But the first month we start on March 9th at Harris. On March 23rd, we go to Heiko, and I really think that'll be a good time of year. Hopefully to be at Heiko. On April 13th, we go to Jordan Lake. That is sponsored by Carolina Pool Boy. Definitely want to thank them for sponsoring that tournament. May 4th is the Carolina Classic. And what that is it going to be a joint tournament between us, CKA, and Foothills. So we should have a good turnout. I chose that lake for this tournament because I wanted a lake that had camping for the Foothills people having to drive so far. So if any of them want to camp, if they don't want to camp, at least it's around Raleigh. And if they want to get hotel rooms or Airbnb or whatever they want to do, it should be a good selection of that. June 8th, we go back to Lake McIntosh. With that, just remind everybody that we've got the cleanup at Lake McIntosh this Saturday at 8 a.m. So we'll be starting to clean up some areas at 8. We will knock off by noon. But right now it's 8 to noon is cleanup, and then 12:30 to 4:30, a little big bash, wildcat on the spot tournament there, $10 cash. And then July 13th, we go back to the Raleigh Rumble. That's 5 lakes around the Raleigh area. August 10th, we go to Gaston. It's our first trip to Gaston, but I've had lots of people wanting to go to Gaston. So we're going. So I hope we have a good turnout August 10th. And then September 7th is our last regular season event. We're going back to Lake Randleman. I put it last on the calendar for two reasons. Participation from the first event to the last event, you see a steady decline in participation. And lots of people have wanted to go to Gaston. Lots of people have wanted to go to Randleman. So I put them at the end of the season, and hopefully all those people that wanted to go will boost the attendance numbers. But also, the very first big tournament we had was at Lake Randleman, and we had 73 people show up. And of those, at least 65 went to the Southwest Park, where there's only a single lane road down to the ramp. And it took almost 2 hours for the last people in line to get launched. So if the numbers are lower, it helps a little bit to have this at Randleman. When we see historically our numbers will be a little bit lower.
Mm.
And so I'll keep an eye on the signups for that one. I'll ask everybody that can to sign up as early as possible so that we can make plans accordingly for that event if we look like we're going to get into that situation again. One thing I haven't done so far, I've had lots of people compliment me on the suite of sponsors that we have this year, and I just want to make sure that I address those. We've talked about Amped, and we've talked about Carolina Pool Boy for the Jordan event, but definitely want to thank 47 Lures. They've stepped up as our title sponsor this year. He is based out of Fuquay, so he's definitely local. He pours baits, he makes spinner baits, he makes jigs, he makes lots of things. I have a box. Not only did he provide some cash for the title sponsorship that allows us to have this StreamYard program that helps me pay for Photoshop and these other programs that I have to use and these other recurring fees, but I've also got a box of baits in the back of my truck. So every angler, first, second, third, and big bass at every tournament will get a pack of 4-7 soft baits. I also want to talk about A1 Pest Control and Wildlife Removal. They're a Sanford-based company, but he travels a pretty good distance, basically like a 2-hour drive from Sanford. Anyone basically that's anywhere close to one of the lakes we fish are in his zone. I had to use him for some bat removal. Had bats in the attic, and couldn't be happier with the service he gave me. Very honest guy, and I was very happy to have him step up. So he's the AOI angler. So we do have extra money in the pot from him to pay out to our AOI anglers, and also for AOI Roz Team Fishing. So Frank Rosnos, who fishes with us, he builds custom rods. He also does guided bow fishing events, not fishing for bowfin, but actually archery. Takes you out on the boat and you're archery fishing for gar, or wherever you are, whatever the predominant fish is there for bow fishing. Could be gar, could be carp, could be bowfin, I guess. Possibly. I've seen people fish those. But anyway, he's for AOI. He's giving I think a rod. I think is what he told me for the AOI angler on top of the extra cash that we get from A1. We've already talked about Amped Outdoors and their commitment as a big bass sponsor, as a giveaway sponsor. Talked about Carolina Pool Boy. As of today, Cape Fear River Adventures out of Lillington is going to sponsor the Harris tournament in March. And what they do is guided trips, guided whitewater rafting, guided tubing, or kayaks on the Cape Fear River. They typically put in at what's called Buckhorn Dam. You can put in at Buckhorn Dam and float all the way down to Lillington. You can go past Lillington, go all the way down to Irwin. But they've got the vans. They take you, they drop you off. They're there to pick you up when you take out. Very glad to have them on board. That email from them literally came in 10 minutes before this live stream started, so I don't have a logo for them or anything quite yet. Want to thank again Pincushion Tattoo Studio, Robert Ebert out of Greensboro. We've got gift cards to give away at every tournament. Want to thank Yak Attack for again stepping up and Yak Attack just has a great commitment to local trails. They sponsor, if you can think of a trail, Yak Attack gives them gift cards. And that's a huge commitment on their part. I'm sure that's pretty expensive for them, uh, but I'm sure it pays back dividends to them.
Yeah.
Want to thank Roz Team Fishing. So not only is he doing the AOI, but he's got a prize for a drawing at every weigh-in that we have this year. I think it's going to be most likely going to be a little custom tool, kind of like a multi-tool that'll be like pliers and cutters and that kind of thing. Definitely something useful for us. Want to thank Chick-fil-A Town Ridge Square on Glenwood Avenue. We've got gift cards to give away with them again. And then I'm excited to have our next two sponsors. There are two more new sponsors. Number one, Cash and Rods for stepping up. And we will be giving away a cash and rod at every weigh-in, and then one to the Angler of the Year and one to the winner of the Clash of the Titans. So, that's 10 cash and fishing rods that we get to give away this year. Very glad to have them on board. And next is Hobie Eyewear. Hobie has given us a great discount code, 25% off any of their sunglasses that you can buy on their website. But I've also got, I don't have enough to do every tournament, but I've got several pairs of Hobie glasses to give away at different points, different weigh-ins throughout the year. Before I even approached them as a sponsor, I bought a pair and I like them. And probably the number one thing I like about, not all of their glasses do, but they have several pairs that do, the glasses float. And if you've ever fished with me, you know that in 3 seasons, I've donated 3 very expensive pair of sunglasses to various lakes. I've got one up at Carr Reservoir. Got a pair of Oakleys at Carr Reservoir. Got a pair of Oakleys at Jordan. And Wiley X. I'm not quite sure where I lost the Wiley X. But anyway, Hobie has given us some stuff then. So, and this is definitely running longer than I envisioned. So I'm going to try to fly through a few things. And a couple of updates real quick. We will not be running monthly tournaments this year. We were going to run a monthly trail where you actually bought into the trail just like you do AOI. And it was going to give an opportunity for someone to qualify for in the points to qualify for the BASS, right? It would be almost the same as AOI. But if you've seen BASS this year, you do not qualify through a club. This year, the BASS tournament will be open. It'll just be an open tournament. You just sign up and fish it. I think that is only for this year, and that next year there will be a qualification in place. But don't hold me to that. That's just my thought. So anyway, with that, we weren't doing monthlies. A1 Pest Control, what they actually signed on as the monthly trail sponsor, but no one bit on the AOI. So when I did away with the monthly, A1 got moved over to be our AOI sponsor. Jeremy says he's getting his pincushion tattoo next week. So the other thing with that, since we're not doing monthlies, last year I got questioned a lot about the Wildcats. And we didn't do really any Wildcats last year at all, I don't think. But we did one on December 31st. We went out to Jordan. I think everybody had fun. We will do more Wildcats this year. We'll do them, at some of the smaller lakes. We'll do them at some of the bigger lakes. We'll do some on the week. We'll do a few on the weekend. Maybe on holiday weekends when we don't want to schedule a big tournament. We'll do a Wildcat for people that aren't traveling. And then also we'll get back to doing a few of the weeknight tournaments once time changes and the sun's going down later and later. Jerseys. Jerseys have been a mess this year. I hope to have had a jersey design ready for people to order before now. I had a manufacturer reach out to me and he didn't make fishing jerseys. He made custom printed like the Columbia UPF shirts. He wants to get into jerseys. So at a cheaper price point, what I was wanting to be able to provide was a hooded sun shirt that kind of looked like a jersey that had all the sponsors listed on it. Um, he's had some family issues and that kind of thing. He's not able to commit to that. So I'm working now with a jersey manufacturer. And so I will have one. 4-7 Lures is getting one, and anybody else that wants to order one can order one directly from them. It won't be through the club, and the club won't make any money on those whatsoever. But it is good representation for our sponsors. I just wanted to mention those. So let's start talking about changes for 2024.
Mitch,
Yeah,
could I just jump in? Someone asked me a question. Could I answer it real quick?
absolutely.
I forgot who it was. It was a question about pop-R cadence.
That was Sammy.
Was
Wilson.
Sammy?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Thank you. Sammy, if that's you, Will says it's you. I can tell you this, pop-R cadence, you can see what I do. Last year I did post quite a bit of video, much more than I normally do. So on my YouTube page, it's Hank John Fishing. If you look at, there's a native no limit event on there that I fished, and I was up fishing around a big laydown, and you can see me that time of year. For some reason, it was in early June. Man, I was working that pop-R. It was almost like a buzz bait. I was just like dot 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 dot, and it was just skipping across the water almost like a rock. And a 20 and a half just came up. I couldn't believe it because I was moving the lure pretty quickly, and a a big bass just came up and was just like boom, and just T-boned it while it was moving at a pretty high speed. So you'll see some clips on there of me working that pop-R at different speeds. I like to find out what speed they like, what cadence they like. But if there's one thing I generally do in almost all situations is when I first throw that lure and it lands, I let it sit and then I move it. But I'll usually count to 3 before I start moving that lure, because if there's a bass within 10 feet, I want to give the fish time to come over and take a look at the bait and find it. So I don't want the bait to leave the initial place where it fell, because that first impression you make on a fish is, oh wait, something's over there. It might be food. Let me go check it out. And they're going to come over and take a look. So for me, cadence is variable depending on the season, their mood, my mood, whatever. When I quit smoking cigarettes, I was working those pop-Rs like because I just didn't know what to do anymore. So I was just, but sometimes, it's the Bill dance, it's a twitch pause kind of thing, or sometimes it's just a really slow cadence. But you'll see, I worked that lure pretty quickly. I remember the first time I was fishing with Matt Dunn, we just met at Jordan to have some fun. And he was like, man, you're killing that lure. And I was like, yeah, I tend to work it pretty hard. Like I make a racket with it and they eat it. So I tend to be a little more aggressive with the cadence, but that first presentation when it hits the water, I force myself to let it sit.
So like Will said earlier, he buys all these baits, right? And then I think he even said he said I buy all these top water baits. I think he even said, but top water is a reaction bite is fun already. Anything that you get from a reaction bait, but then when it's top water, so a pop-R, a whopper plopper, buzz bait, anything that's top water where you actually see the explosion, frog, I love it. I love those bites. I don't know why the last 2 years top water hasn't worked for me, but it's one of my favorite ways to catch them. So.
Yeah, Andy. Well, Mitch, you and I spoke about this on the Cape Fear River. We were talking about buzz baits. I saw you after I pre-fished, and I was killing them. I wouldn't say I was killing them. I caught a few decent ones on a buzz bait, and I also caught a big bowfin on a buzz bait, which was like made the whole trip for me at least. Um, but when I went back there, 2 weeks later when we had the tournament, that buzz bait wasn't bringing them up anymore. They just wouldn't have it. Um, so I had to put it down and find something else, and it turned out to be a pop bar. They just wanted a different look, but I had to also fish a different area. Um, Yep, there it is. 4-7 lures says his personal best came on a top water walking bait. A lot of guys fish those spooks, Zara spooks, or walk the dog and stuff like that.
I struggle with them on a kayak. It's the ergonomics of kayak fishing. If you're not standing up, that's a hard bait to fish, and I don't recommend standing up too often in the Cape Fear River. On still days, it's fine, but if you just never know if current's going to knock you into a log or something.
Yep.
Same with jerk baits. I tend to struggle with a jerk bait on the kayak. I like to throw a jerk bait. I'm trying to concentrate that a little bit more after attending KVD's morning session at the Raleigh Bass and Saltwater Expo. I'm excited about the new Berkeley Credge. If you guys haven't seen that, it's a quick sinking jerk bait, and then the front bill is turned up instead of down.
Oh, yeah.
So what happens is when you jerk it, it comes up in the water, and then it shimmies backwards back down. It's actually optimized to use with forward facing sonar, but everybody's talking about it. It works great, without forward facing sonar. Another point I was going to make earlier. Forward facing sonar is a huge debate in the fishing world as a whole, right? Not just kayaks. Randy Blaukut, or however you pronounce his name, he's got a whole YouTube channel dedicated to trying to make them get forward facing sonar illegal, right, in the pros. But we've got a great example here as Will has live scope on his kayak, and Hank, I don't even know if you have a depth finder on
I do.
all of your kayaks.
Well, one of them does, and one of them doesn't. I sold it recently. It was an old Jackson Cruise, and it was about as basic a kayak as you could fish out of. It was just really simple, and I like that to just paddle when I know I'm fishing water where I don't need it. But sometimes I'll have it even when I'm fishing water um, that I don't think requires necessarily. But I do have a small Lowrance unit. It's a Hook 5. I've had it 4 or 5 years. It's pretty basic. It's got side scan. I do use that, especially in a wider river channel. I want to see what's on the sides. And I will definitely use electronics even in deeper water if I'm fishing deeper water, but I do not have live scope, and I do not have like a big. I was out with Larry Anderson on Macintosh. I remember that morning of the tournament that I won, and he launched his boat, and he had some pretty big new electronics on it with like these 10-inch screens. And I was like, what would you do? Bring your laptop out here, man?
I tell a lot of dad jokes at the boat ramp. Ask them, do they get Netflix on their?
It's crazy.
When they've got those big screens. I'm like, you watching Netflix on this while we're out here, or what?
Well, you got to be out there watching Bassmaster Live or something, while you're out there fishing as well.
So I think whoever this is summed it up very well.
Sammy again. He needs to go in there and link his Facebook so that we can see his name.
Top water versus live scope. That was the AOI race last year.
Actually, if you want to know what I caught him on, I'll tell you. It was not. I think I caught at the Cape Fear. I caught him on top water. The majority of my limit, I think, was top water, and maybe a couple at Hyco. But the majority of my fish came on crankbaits last year. I fished crankbaits heavily last season. Rapala is always my brand. The Shad Rap is a lure that I love, and I've fished a lot of Shad Raps and a few what they call slash baits. It's a crankbait. Basically, you just fish it a little more like a jerk bait, but but it looks like a crankbait, and it has a similar profile to that shad rat. So I fish mostly on those. With those, I fished a lot of just power fishing last year. The year before, I was fishing a shaky head a little more. Last year, I kind of put it down. I just fished whatever they were biting. That's what I fished.
Yep, and you still have to figure out what they're biting, regardless of whether you're
And,
going on instinct or live scope, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I give you an example. 2019, the first tournament I caught fish on a spinnerbait, and then we had that. I think it was the Jordan. Maybe Jordan was next. I don't remember. But I fished pretty much a shaky head with a crawl, a 4-inch rage crawl on it. When I tell you I haven't hardly caught a fish doing that since,
Hmm.
I haven't. Last year, or I guess now 2022, a Nico worm. That's basically a little bit of a shaky head and a Nico worm was what I won Jordan on in 2022. I hardly caught a fish last year on a Nico worm. Now I caught him a lot on a shaky head, a mag shaky head, a big shaky head. It just seems to change every year, and I don't know whether that's me or if that's the fish or a combination of both. I think like you have in your notebook, Hank, and I do pretty much the same thing, except I do with pictures because I'm too lazy to write all that out. It's easier for me to go back just through the photos
Yep.
and locations and stuff. But yeah, I kind of do that too, and I don't know. Sometimes it's the same, and sometimes it's not. It depends.
Yeah. Yeah, it's well said, man. You
The
definitely
fish
nailed
see
it
so
there.
many things, right? Whatever's the latest and greatest, they're going to see a lot of that, that year. Some new bait that comes out, maybe like the I
Yeah.
don't know,
So,
some new
so
bait like a Berkeley Nessie, soft plastic
yeah.
glide bait or whatever. I get caught up in the in whatever that the advertisers are pushing. That's what I get caught.
And, you was talking about with live. I've noticed. So this was my second year having it. Um, those fish are just like they say about side scan and going up shallow and turn your units off, so that you don't have that ping. It's the same thing going forward. Those fish feel that. They're gonna. I mean, I remember when I first got it and went to certain lakes. They didn't you they didn't know what it was. They'd get curious, or they just didn't care or didn't know what to do. And pretty dumb. Now there's sometimes where you can pan over to a school and they instantly feel it and they're gone, like straight to the bottom or whatever, just to get away from it.
Well, I mean,
And the fish
last
adapt.
time
Now
they heard that.
crappie,
Sorry.
they're not going to adapt. They're just dumb sometimes.
Well, I was going to say, when you get a school like that, they're thinking, well, last time I heard that sound, George took off out of here like a bat out of hell. And he still hadn't come back. We don't know what that's about. So,
And I think that the whole deal in the pros right now, I think that having two off the back, one in
that's crazy.
perspective,
On
one
each
forward,
side.
one.
Yeah, some of them have 5.
That's dumb to me
Some of them
personally.
have 5 sonars now,
Yep.
5
Yep.
live scopes, 5 transducers. Going off one forward, one off each side, and 2 off the back. That blew my mind.
I wish they would just ban what they have now and just allow it to where it doesn't. See if they could come up with something that doesn't show the fish but just shows structure, because that's what means the most to me. Is that knowing that my bait's falling to that tree or falling to that stump or whatever. I don't care if it shows a fish or not, because that's what I like to fish. That's how I like to fish, is the bottom, for the most part. So if they could just figure out how to do that, I think that would solve everything.
Patrick says some of his old helicopter lures hopefully will work again because nobody throws them anymore.
Hey, I think certain lures like the chatterbait, so many people were throwing them, and I feel like a spinnerbait made it come back a little bit recently. Same thing with any kind of top water. I think a whopper plopper was great, and then it went away.
Yeah,
the bite.
I got one for you. Inline spinners.
Oh yeah. You don't see many of those much. Not now.
No. I always got a few, and back in the old days when I first started, I would catch a lot of fish on those, and I still carry a couple every year just in case the mood strikes, and I feel like that is going to produce. The right bladed bait. Sometimes It's just a difference, a minor difference, with a smaller profile. Instead of a big spinner bait, you go with a little inline spinner. It's still got a Colorado blade. They just like it more, or a
Yep.
willow blade or something. They just want that instead of the bigger one. Go figure.
Talking about forward facing, Seth's on with us tonight. Seth being the district
Hey, Seth.
fisheries biologist for Jordan and lakes west of Jordan, District 3, I think it is. But he says Texas is doing research now on live scope and bass behavior, and he will share that with us when it's published. But it's still too early for hard conclusions. And I agree. It's been last year and this year are the years of live scope, right? Last year was really when it came to prominence, I would think. I mean, it was out before then, but last year was when they went away from the bathoscopes, when they're fishing the northern lakes for smallmouth. 2 years ago, you were watching them stick the bathoscope down in the water and look through this homemade cone to see where the fish were. And now they can just do it on their fish finder instead. I didn't like watching them do the bathoscope. I definitely don't like watching them fish the. I don't like watching a smallmouth tournament anyway because it's watch your fish finder. It's drop shots. It's not exciting fishing to view. It probably is exciting to do it and catch all those fish. But got several. Eric said go back to a MEPS number 3. And somebody says, the 1/4 ounce beetle spin. And those beetle spins caught a lot of fish when I was a kid.
They still do.
Yeah.
Panther Martin.
I still have them. So, well, real quick, I want to jump into a couple changes for 2024. 3 changes and 1 suggestion. So let's see. The first thing I'll talk about is we're only using catch boards this year. It does not have to be a metal catch. It just has to. Your measuring board needs to be a catch board, whether it's the carbonite, whether it's the X, or whether it's that OG that will make your kayak tilt to one side, depending on how you store it on one side or the other. But just make sure you have a catch before you're in the first tournament. That's clearly stated in the rules now. With that, 10 tags are available now at Blue Fox Gifts. The new 10 tags. We will accept the old 10 tags. The reason we do so, it's good for our sponsors to have the new 10 tags because every picture that gets turned in with that 10 tag, it shows our sponsors. But we did start this trail with the intent of being a little more cost effective. And trying to get newer people into the sport at a lower price point. So I still want to keep some of that DNA in the trail. So yeah, I'm not going to make you go out and buy a new $15 10 tag. We would appreciate it if you do. The club doesn't make any money on it. Those are ordered straight from Blue Fox. We appreciate them. I think all the kayak trails appreciate what Blue Fox does with the 10 tags. The next thing I want to address real quick, talking about being cost effective and lower price point, we do have an increase on tourney fees this year. Just a little background really quickly. I don't know if you know, the way Tourney X works, last year, $5 off the top of every entry fee went straight to Tourney X. So what happens is you guys pay the tourney fees into CCKF. CCKF gets a bill the day after the tournament from Tourney X for $5 times however many anglers were signed up on Tourney X. So 20 anglers, that's $100 straight off the top that goes to Tourney X. Tourney X has never had a price increase until this year. And when they hit us with it, it's a little bit of a doozy. It was a 30% price increase. So now it's $6.50 off the top of every entry fee. So last year we were $35 for the entry fee and $5 optional big bass. We had to come up with a way to accommodate the higher Tourney X fee. We're doing a $45 flat entry fee this year. $6.50 of that comes off the top and goes to Tourney X, and then $5 of that comes off and goes towards Big Bass. One thing that is cumbersome about having an optional Big Bass is that at the end of the day, when you're judging, you have to remember who signed up for Big Bass and who didn't. It was usually depending on the size of our tournament, there would be 3 to 5 people who did not sign up for Big Bass. I got really lucky because I didn't think about that a lot of times, and luckily, everybody that won Big Bass last year had signed up for Big Bass.
Don't do like I did in 2022 and don't.
Right.
Sign up.
Yeah. Will didn't sign up and would have won it if he had. So.
And Hank won it.
And that's happened. That's happened to me twice now. Where actually, I think it happened, if you want to count it, 3 times, because I had the 3rd biggest bass in the tournament, but the 2 people in front of me didn't sign up. So it fell to me.
You fell to you, yeah.
And then the one with you, Will, you didn't sign up, and it fell to me as well because I had, and I think that was the only fish I caught, or I only caught 2 fish, and one of them won Big Bass. So yeah, that's a smart move, because if you make it automatic, you don't have to think about it, and guys don't have to, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to show this one while I'm talking. I'm going to show this one for Seth. Seth, you can type an answer and I'll display it. How do you feel about the largemouth bass name change?
What?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. So I will address. Jeremy asked. Service has gotten better with Fishing Chaos, and maybe we consider going back to Fishing Chaos. I think Fishing Chaos has a good product. I had some conflicts with Fishing Chaos that happened behind the scenes. It resulted in me having to float about $1,500 out of my own pocket to make the payouts for a tournament. There was a mix-up on their side with where the money got paid to. It went to Fishing Chaos's bank account instead of my bank account, and it took me about 2 months. And I was really not satisfied with the customer service I got in resolving that issue. And then they tried to send my money to CKA. No fault of CKA. I'm very glad for the very honest people at CKA who said, "Do not send us this money. It's not ours." I think you got us confused.
Just for the record, I wasn't working there at the time, because if I was.
Hey, we just got a $1,500 bonus. Meanwhile, Mitch just retired from fishing and to sell his kayak to make payments. I'm not saying I'll never go back to them again, but that's a lot for me to overcome. And I'm not bitter about it or anything. It just happened that it happened. So, but anyway, that's catch boards and that's 10 tags. That's fees. I will say this, if you think about it, it was $40 last year. It's only $5 more this year, and $1.50 of that increase is going to Tourney X. Payouts this year are significantly higher than they were last year. It's just I've just gone through and reworked payouts. I don't want to publish them yet because I may have to adjust them after the first tournament. The one thing that you struggle with payouts like this are we're using Stripe this year instead of PayPal to receive the money from Tourney X. So that should be lower fees. Stripe has lower transaction fees than PayPal. And so I'm making a lot of assumptions about how much money I'm going to have to pay out, on average per angler. I think I've gone through the numbers 3 or 4 times. I think I'm pretty accurate, but I am me, and I spent 10 of my 12 years in public school, and not sure if my arithmetic is where it should be. So I just always like to wait and verify that after the first tournament. Anything that would, if I have to pay out more than I was planning, that's fine. That's on me. if I don't pay out enough, that money will just carry over to AOI or Clash of the Titans. It will not, that's what we do with anything that's above and beyond. Um, uh, and the last thing that I'm aware of changes will be our launch policy. So I've fallen in line this year with everybody else, and we'll have published launches for the tournaments. Um, like at Falls Lake. Um, Falls Lake, for example, we said any public access. Um, we will still allow the primitive launch. That is a published launch. We'll still, there's that primitive launch up at the Beaver Dam area. I think it's close to. I've never used that one, but like the launches that are on the side of the Highway 98, things like that. Those are not legal this year. It will be we'll have them posted in all the event on Tourney X and on Facebook. It'll for the most part, it will be public boat ramps. Um, uh, I'm debating at Harris to allow that bridge or not. If you want to go through the pain and suffering of having to drag your kayak back up that bank over there at the bridge, then I think you deserve to be able to launch there. That's one day if Drew Blair hadn't have been there, my kayak might still be there. I think I'd have just donated it to the lake because I was not getting it up that hill from the side of the lake back up to the side of the road. And I definitely couldn't do it with my age now. And especially now that I've added a motor and a battery and everything else to my kayak. Yes, the guy that always said I was against motors finally has a motor. But I've got 54-year-old knees at this point, and they thank me both times I've taken it out. They've thanked me tremendously for purchasing that motor. And let's see what this one says. If 98 isn't legal, that's fair. I think that's fair, and that's why I was still debating it. Really, that and that you're then limited to 2 launches at Harris, but I don't think 2 launches is not enough. It still beats going to Randleman and having to drag up that hill. So just to summarize, the changes this year is we're catchboard only. Launch fees have increased a little bit. Several tournaments are already listed on Tourney X. So if you had already looked, you'll see the $45 fee. It's a flat fee for everybody. Everybody signed up for Big Fish, and comparing the payouts this year is I click. It's funny when you go to show one of these comments. If somebody comments, another one pops up right before you click it. You can click on the wrong one. That launch at 98, where there's a parking lot there, and you go down an old section of road, and it's about 300 yards on that road, and it is a grade. The entire going down is easy. In fact, it's almost hard because you're scared your kayak's going to run over you going down that hill. You should let the kayak go first and walk behind it, holding it back. But coming up that hill, I think I stopped 7 times to catch my breath between the water's edge and my vehicle. That was crazy. And then there's another primitive launch that I launched at. I think it was a CKA event on Falls, and I launched at that one primitive launch that you need a 4-wheel drive to get anywhere close to the water. And then when everybody was coming out and you tried to pull up that hill, it was the rocks. It was the rocks and getting your wheels caught on all that stuff. Jeremy said, I sprinted my Titan up and then came back down and sprinted Alex's Slayer.
I'm just going to jump in here and I'm on a note for the record because you pointed it out when I got off the water, but I knew that I had gone far. Mitch, do you recall how far I pedaled last year from Avon Ferry to get to where I fished? Was it 14 miles?
I think round trip was 14 miles. Yeah, and there was no current. There was no downstream current, So you would think, okay, you pedal upriver, you pay the toll, and then you get to kind of coast back a little. No, no. Yeah,
So
it's about 7 miles from that launch to where you fished.
yeah. So that day I fished for all of about 2.5 hours, and I spent the other 5.5 pedaling
Yeah.
basically, and occasionally throwing a lure out if I saw something I liked. But I had to just keep moving to get to where I wanted to go because my plan A just died. I caught one fish on plan A, so plan B was get up the river. Um, and of course, there's a primitive launch up that way, but I just couldn't use it by
Right,
myself
right.
because, yeah. Uh, so there are those situations. I'm grateful in a sense to hear that you're going to eliminate some of those combat launches. Um, but there's still another part of me that always loves to find those out of the way spots and
Yeah,
launch
yeah.
there, even though I'm getting older. But I just tell myself I can just do that in practice or whatever. Um, there's a lot of, I would think, risk involved there, especially if you're going alone, like you said at Holloman's Bridge. Your kayak would still be there, so I think it's a wise move from a safety perspective, in particular. And you know, if you got a motor, you can make those runs pretty easily. I pedaled, but with a motor, you're going to cut that time in half, and you're going to have a lot more energy when you get off the water.
Well, my first CKA, my first kayak event at Cape Fear was the CKA Cape Fear event. Right, Jeremy Hicks won that tournament. I believe he was either first or second. But he went all the way up the Hall River. He went all the way up to Jordan Dam, which is also um, about 7.5 miles. Uh, he had the Old Town kayak with the built-in Minn Kota at that time.
Hmm.
Um, not spot lock, all that. This was like the first iteration of the Old Town. It had the
Yeah.
little drop in, and I was just amazed. I was amazed one that he had enough battery to go that far. Um, these were the very early batteries. Not a lot of people had lithium at that time, and I believe those old towns used a built-in battery, which I would assume would be limited to somewhere around 30 amp hours.
Yeah.
Um, so it's
That's a
amazing to me
run.
that he could make it. Yeah, I look forward to doing that myself now. Um, there are spots on Cape Fear River that, well, I went to Cape Fear River by myself in the fall,
Yep.
and I did. When I got in, I committed. I'm not going to cast a line until I at least get um, to the split where the Hall and the Deep River split. Um, I wanted to get to that old power plant. Uh, there's a rocky flat that I like at that power plant. I would have loved to have gotten on up the Deep River up to US 1. There was no way I was going to make it. Even that day, I went 8.5 miles, and that was a fairly chilly day, and I lost a sock while I was out there. That's one thing about Cape Fear. There's not many places you can get out of the boat and lose a sock. Um, Luckily, I found right across from that old power plant, somebody had tried to build a private boat launch, and they basically had like a riprap style boat launch down into the water. And I think that saved me from a lot of heartache that day.
Mm. Dang.
And I know that with the CKA event, you and Drew launched up around US 1, or I think you launched beside old US 1,
Yep.
and that's about when you drop your boat from that bank in the water, that's usually about at least a 3 foot drop down to the water, and there's no place to step. Right, you're not going down on the little pea gravel, and you've got a little step into your boat. I mean, that's a commitment. So
That's a leap of faith.
yeah, yeah, but that's one one, we didn't have a good turnout for Cape Fear. Several guys complained about it. A lot of guys liked it. Um, but it's close enough for all of us. I didn't put it back on the schedule, and maybe we'll do a Cape Fear Wildcat or something. I like
Oh
fishing.
yeah.
Um,
I love fishing that river, and I've been out there. People don't believe it. We did a little tournament there. It was me, Drew, Eric Nelson, Wayne Butler, just a kind of a little friendly, everyone put
yeah,
$5 in.
yep,
And Man, it was one of the best bites I've ever had. I couldn't believe it.
When
It's
it's
great.
when it's on
Oh,
out there, it's on. I mean,
it's
I've caught 5 pound plus fish out there.
Mhm.
And people don't believe you, but at the right time of year, a buzzbait is fire out there.
Mhm.
You can go out there with a buzzbait, a spinnerbait, and a soft plastic. You can take 3 rods, and you can probably have a successful day.
Yep.
And then you throw in some mid-range crankbaits under those bridges and around those pylons, and where there's holes out in the middle of the river. Um, but
Hey,
I've grown. Believe it or not, um, before Jordan existed in the early '80s, and before Harris was built for there, that was where people from this area went to water ski. Was Cape Fear River behind the Buckhorn Dam. I'm thinking. I mean, I've watched a guy knock the lower unit off his bass boat running up through there, and hitting a log that was submerged. I can't imagine, being on a water ski and bailing and finding one of those logs under the water, in an unlucky moment. So
that's
That
crazy.
this past year was the first time I'd ever fished it, and the first time I went out there for pre-fish, I'm just sitting there throwing spinnerbait at the bank and hear a boat coming. I'm like, that doesn't sound like a bass boat. And I look around, and it's a wake boat, and I'm like, why are y'all out here? Go to the lake.
I didn't know
I'm trying to get
anybody
away
still
from
did
y'all for
that.
once.
I know
Wow.
I used to. My father-in-law used to be a nervous wreck because when I had my big bass boat with a big motor on it, and I'm running 55 miles an hour up that river, to get to a spot. He was scared to death.
No.
And he's like, "Aren't you worried you're going to hit something?" I was like, "I've got as little bit of prop and a little bit of this boat in the water as possible. Like, I'm as much up on plane. That's half the reason I ran fast, was to get as much of the boat out of the water as I could." And
Can I ask Will a question before because I got to get going?
yeah.
Yeah.
Will, how do you approach, like, what are you looking ahead to in terms of next year? Like, how, like, with everything going on, how are you, like, setting up your year? Do you have a plan, or do you just go in and fish and wing it?
I don't. You talk about like what the deciding of whether to fish the beach trail or just any
Whatever.
of that.
Yeah.
Like last year, I just started running CK, and I actually started fishing a little bit of Queen City just to kind of branch out and do a little bit something different in terms of spotted bass, stuff like that, and with foothills, which I plan on doing some of theirs this year as well. And then just seeing which one I could do better at the beginning of the year, and things didn't line up to do CKs as much at the beginning of the year, between my wreck and family passing, and just things didn't line up early in the year, but it did with CCKF. So that's kind of, I decided to run for points in CCKF. It's the same thing this year. I've finished bridesmaid back-to-back years, once to Brian, once to you, and AOI. So maybe third time's lucky this year. I kind of want to get a CCKF one, so I can say I have a CK and a CCKF AOI.
Mm,
So that's my plan this year so far.
wow.
I tend to agree with Jeremy because I've heard it on good authority. Will's already been to Harris this year, trying to figure out patterns and such. So it'll change a
I've
lot
been
between
there,
now
but
and
I
March.
haven't figured anything out. So
Yeah.
I went back-to-back times catching a 20-incher, but that's a bit.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
one thing to point out. It doesn't affect us in the kayaks, but if any of you do fish in boats, uh, I I would think it's proposed to do away with the slot limit at Harris.
Yep.
So regular boat tournaments, they've either had to be um, below what was the limit? Was it 16?
16.
If it was touching 16, it was not legal, and it had to be above
20.
20 or 21, somewhere in that range, 20, I believe. And you could not put it in a live well or anything like that in another tournament. So we've always had an advantage at Harris compared to those tournaments. The wildlife proposals this year are to get rid of that slot limit. Typically, if it's in that comment section, for one, I don't really know why anybody would come out with comments against that. The Resource Commission has data to show that growth has been stunted. You know, and it worked well. I think it did work well for a while, and now it's just kind of, you know, as Seth has told us many times in the live streams, you have to take fish out of the lake to keep it healthy.
Yep.
And with that, you know, being a large portion of the fish that are caught out there being in that slot limit, none of those have been taken. Combine that with the fact that you don't have bank access at Harris the way that you do at Jordan. So, you know, the way I view it, the majority of people in boats are doing catch and release. I mean, I know there's crappie fishermen catching crappie, but not many people are catching bass, and or not many people are keeping bass and eating bass, and probably even fewer at Harris just because of the perceived nuclear danger, whatever. Which I think they're clean out there, but I've definitely eaten crappie and everything else. If you're eating enough fish for the mercury levels to affect you, you're eating a lot more than I do. I can tell you that.
A little radiation never hurt anyone.
That's right. That's right. I'm looking to add some extra growth here and there. So it's so, you know, who knows? Might be a benefit. I don't know. But yeah, so they're going to, you know, just in case y'all hadn't heard, it looks like assuming that nothing changes, as of August 1st, there'll no longer be a slot limit on Harris.
Wow.
The only way that I can perceive that affecting us is that maybe some of the boat tournaments don't go to Harris because they have to deal with the slot limit. So you could very easily probably make the argument that after August 1st, you're going to see increased boat traffic at Harris because the slot limit is gone.
Yeah.
But you know what? We go to falls, we go to these big lakes. You know, most of our kayaks are stable enough that we're not you know, most of our kayaks are stable enough that, yeah, it's an inconvenience to get rocked by a big wake. I'm more concerned with the wake boats than I am with the bass boats. When a bass boat's up on plane and running pretty quick, I find it doesn't affect me very much on my kayak. Those wake boats freaking take on the water and halfway sink themselves so they can create bigger wakes for these guys. I lost a friend because he was a fisherman, but then he started wakeboarding too. And I said, you can't be both. You know, a man can't serve two masters, and you can't be a fisherman and a wakeboarder at the same time. So,
Wow.
Anyway, hey,
Anybody that is bass boat guy that's out here, if you see us like kayakers and stuff, don't like if you're just going down the lake, don't slow down because you're actually making almost as bad of a wake
slowing down
as a
makes
wake
your
boat
wake
will.
worse.
Just go.
Just go.
Yep.
You know, I'd rather deal with one that's slow and been slow the whole time. It seems like that initial part of the wake, when that boat comes down in the water, it creates that initial part of the wake that really gets us. Well, guys, I really appreciate y'all being on tonight. I'm glad you could do it. I didn't ask either one of you till today, and I'm glad you were both available. Congratulations on 2023. Regardless of which points trail, I know you're both going to be competitive in a points trail this year, whether it's this one or CKA or whatever. Good luck in any points trail you fish. Glad you're going to be fishing some of our events, if not all of them. And you know, like we talked about the camaraderie before. The one thing I'll say about Will and Hank both, if you see them on the water, if you see them at the boat ramp, these are not unapproachable people. These are guys that love to talk about fishing, right down to the color, what lure they were throwing, what color, what depth of water, which pretty much proves across almost all of kayak fishermen that you come across are that way. That's one thing I love about it. So good luck to both of you. Good luck to everybody watching, to everybody that participates. We're praying for another safe year. There's never really been a bad incident in a CCKF event. We did have one guy that got swamped and lost some bait, and I think another one flipped when you're coming back into the boat ramp. But never anything. We've never had anything life threatening, and I hope that it always stays that way.
Amen.
That's a tough. I think that would work on my conscience pretty hard. I will say this: we actually had a guy that jumped off his boat and saved a child in the water at Farrington Point. The water was cold. I believe it was early last year. If it wasn't year before, um, but a kid fell out. A guy hit the gas on his John boat, and his kid flipped out the back of the boat and didn't realize it. He didn't realize it. And one of our anglers, who actually was a first responder, came off of his kayak, went into the water, and got that kid to safety. And it's odd. My father-in-law runs a small bass boat trail, and in the still at Jordan, in the Crosswinds Marina, he happened to notice that there was a small child running, down the docks there in that boat marina, and he could not see a parent anywhere. And that child went off the dock into the water like a 5-year-old child. And this guy jumped off of his bass boat. He had a co-angler that was able to get on the trolling motor. He jumped off his bass boat and got that 5-year-old kid out of the water. The parents were bank fishing in a whole nother section, and that child had wandered off without their knowledge and had gone off that dock.
I'm going to share a little story that will tell you some things about my character, and it's actually quite similar. When I was a child, and I don't have a memory of the event, but I ran away in a department store where my mother was shopping, and I found my way down to the river, the Hackensack River in North Jersey. And they had to bring out the police, the SWAT team, the river rescue. They spent hours searching for me back in the swamp. And for years after that, until I was 5 or 6, my mother made me wear a little bell around my neck so she could always hear where I was in the store. Because whenever we went to that store, she knew I was going to take off and go try and find the river and mess around down on the bank.
Well,
so little kids, they'll always find trouble.
I'm allergic to cats, but if I had one now, I would name him Hank and have a bell around his collar.
And get you an Apple AirTag now.
Yeah. Now you got air tags or what else. Well, like I said, I appreciate you guys coming on. Yep. Thank you. This has been more of a conversation than it has anything else. I hope we didn't bore anybody. I hope we didn't lose too many people. It definitely carried longer than I thought it would, but I've enjoyed it. So look forward.
Thank you for your hospitality.
Yeah. Look forward to fishing with everybody this season. Looking forward to a successful season. So everybody have a good night, and we'll see you on the water.